Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. India and US signal resumption of trade talks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Trump call each other close friends, express optimism of successful outcome from trade talks. In Nepal, Army extends nationwide curfew, issues prohibitory orders. India heightens security on borders. Prime Minister Modi says Nepal's stability vital to India. Poland downs Russian drones after unprecedented airspace violation. Ukrainian President Zelensky calls for a strong response from its allies. EU chief von der Leyen reiterates Europe's commitment to stand in full solidarity with Poland. India crosses a major milestone in its clean energy journey, tripled its non-fossil capacity in just a decade, placing itself among the global leaders. And in sports, India begin Asia Cup campaign against the host UAE in Dubai today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today reaffirmed the strength of India-US relations and expressed confidence in the ongoing trade negotiations between the two nations. Prime Minister Modi said that both the nations will work together to secure a brighter, more prosperous future for both our people. Responding to a post by President of the US on X, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote him, "India and the US are close friends and natural partners. I'm confident that our trade negotiations will pave the way for unlocking the limitless potential of our India-US partnership. Our teams are working to conclude these discussions at the earliest. I'm also looking forward to speaking with President Trump. We will work together to secure a brighter, more prosperous future for both our people." Just hours after Prime Minister Modi posted on X, US President Trump reposted the comments made by Prime Minister Modi on Truth Social. Earlier on social media platform Truth Social, Trump had said that India and the US will continue negotiations to address the trade barriers. In a social media post, he had said, and I quote him, "I am pleased to announce that India and the United States of America are continuing negotiations to address the trade barriers between our two nations. I look forward to speaking with my very good friend Prime Minister Modi in the upcoming weeks. I feel certain that there will be no difficulty in coming to a successful conclusion for both of our great countries." Earlier, DD India's Saurabh Shukla sent us a report from Washington, D.C. on the significance of the India-US trade talks resumption.
I think this is a very big development, if you ask me. And if you see Prime Minister Narendra Modi's post on X and earlier President Trump's post on Truth Social announcing the resumption of these trade talks and also the personal chemistry between the two leaders. If you ask me, the most consequential part, and I was there in White House today as well till late, and I can tell you that President Trump accords the highest respect for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And this whole thaw, if you ask me, it's a thaw of sorts, has come around only because of the personal chemistry between the two leaders. And that's the reason why this is a clear signal, if you ask me, not only to resume these trade talks, but also to make sure that both the countries expedite their partnership across sectors. This is not about trade alone. This is about India and the US working together for a safer, prosperous, and a world where both the countries' strategic interest is preserved. So I think this is a very, very important development, and we should not only hail it, but also build from it. I do expect that the Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will talk, and at some stage, there will be a meeting between the two as well. But I would say that the trade deal and these talks and tariffs is just a small part of it. Obviously, India made sure that its own national interest was not compromised, and there was a clear message coming from Prime Minister Modi, and President Trump also understood that concern that India had, and that's the reason why you see this kind of a thaw coming out, which is will be a major step forward, not only for both the countries, but also a lot of other countries who were watching this very closely.
Also, Prime Minister Modi has called President Trump a close friend. How is that personal rapport being perceived in the US political circles? Saurabh Shukla gets us more on this.
I think, the mood here in Washington is very clear. And there is a sense that of relief, you asked me, because there are a lot of people, even in the US administration, who wanted this deal with India because they realized the importance of India in global affairs. They also realized that India is an important partner of the United States. And obviously, they didn't want the trade dispute to cloud the entire bilateral partnership. And I would say that India-US relationship is much more multifaceted, whether it's in defense, strategic arena, on technology, on artificial intelligence. There are a lot more that both the countries can do together, even on critical minerals. So I think that message has gone on. And in the Trump White House, let me tell all of your viewers that President Trump defines the policy. The fact that he has a respect for the Prime Minister, the fact that he has great chemistry, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that really played a big impact, and that will continue to have an impact on this overarching relationship that we have between the two countries. I think it's in both the countries' interest to make sure that there are enough and more opportunities for these leaders to meet and to continue to engage with each other, to make sure that any small differences that the two countries have can be ironed out with the leader-to-leader diplomacy, which really carries a lot of weight in the Trump White House.
All right, to talk more about it, our correspondent Jessica Taneja is joining us. Jessica, good afternoon. Now, we've told our viewers how Prime Minister and President Donald Trump have put forth on social media the strength of the Indo-US relationship. Help us understand. Now, Donald Trump is a man of surprises. This affirmation comes after just a few days back, he said some unworthy comments about India after the SCO summit photographs surfaced. Having said that, to what extent is this optimism and positivity, newfound optimism and positivity in the relationship, reliable and noticeworthy in the coming few days, in the future?
Well, Donald Trump's spontaneity is somehow alien to traditional diplomacy, and traditional diplomacy cannot fathom on how to sort of deliberate on all of this. But one thing is certain, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump have built the momentum to an extent for the way the entire trade negotiations should move forward. And you'd recall before, just at the beginning of this year, when we saw the trade numbers of the last financial year, the trade between the two countries was approximately $131 billion, and that included India exporting $88 billion worth of goods. So these are huge numbers and have huge impact as well, not just the industry back here, but also the IT firms and the US companies that have worked with not just this particular sector, but in other areas as well. So for the trade negotiations to continue is what the primary goal at this point is between the two nations. As far as the discussion of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, these exchanges, the second in the last 4 days, you'd recall over the weekend as well, Donald Trump had put out his post on Truth Social, where he had indicated that that Prime Minister Modi is a dear friend to him, and that India and the United States will continue to be important partners. And that reiteration came from the Prime Minister as well, not just on Saturday, but today as well, that India and the United States are natural partners, which seems to be the case. And the fact that, more discussions and deliberations would clear the path for certain hurdles in trade that the two have now set out to negotiate.
All right, Jessica, do we see this repositioning of President Donald Trump To what extent will it help in the trade negotiations that will follow from here on?
Well, it's difficult to perceive and say on what kind of impact it would have on the current negotiations when it comes to trade and tariff truces. What both sides would look forward to in case the material of this conversation is to fructify, which does seem to be the case now because the stress and the focus at this point remains on trade. That again, because India and the United States are United States is the largest trading partner, and the fact that there's a lot at stake, not just for the Indian companies who could possibly look to diversify in the future if there are certain conditions at play, but for the American companies that have invested heavily into Indian IT firms, saying particularly, would find it very difficult to go to, say, countries like Vietnam, as well as Indonesia and other countries in the neighborhood. So it perhaps sort of gives you a signal that these trade talks should resume soon, given that the two countries were on the path of increasing their bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. That was the mission 500 that both countries were looking at or deliberating upon. So there are multiple aspects of India and United States relationship, which of course spreads to not just traditional sectors of defense and trade, but also cooperation in the energy sector as well as space. And not to forget the dependence on India for resilient supply chain in the Indo-Pacific theater, which seems to be getting complicated each day.
All right, that was about trade between the two countries, Jessica, but also what light does it throw on India, positioning of India on the global page, softening of stance by the US in the trade talks. To what extent does it show that India cannot be taken lightly? And also, you're talking of the geopolitical, challenges faced by the world at this time. To what extent does it put India in the favorable light on the global page?
Well, India is the fourth largest economy in the world, soon to become the third largest. And the fact that its economic heft has not just been noticed, but acknowledged fairly well. You've seen the investments that have come into India. Say, for example, the American investment, the foreign direct investment, it's to the tunes of $70 billion, and I'm sure it's exceeding. So in terms of trade and in terms of India's economic heft, and with its balanced diplomacy and understanding the kind of complicated geopolitical theater it is surrounded with, not giving into too much noise, and keeping its course. Especially if you recall the kind of comments and accusations that were made by Donald Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro, and then you had the likes of Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, also give out similar indications that India needs to stop buying Russian oil, and hence it was facing a 50% tariff. So of course the kind of importance that India has on the world stage, not just limited to the Indo-Pacific theater, goes on to say that it is a partner that America needs. It is a natural partner that America would have, given the kind of governance systems and other technological advantages and the markets that India provides. Similarly, for America, its IT services would be quite difficult to onshore, despite all the efforts being made by America to make it a very protectionist economy. India somehow comes across as one of the key important players with a huge population and skilled workers packed into one to cater to the American demand, no matter how much it wants to, increase the jobs back home. But it's a partner like India that it simply cannot ignore.
All right, Jessica, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details and those insights. So that was our correspondent Jessica Taneja telling us more and evaluating for us the reaffirmation of the strength of India-US relationship put forth by both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump on social media. Up next, we are heading for a short break. You're watching DD India NewsHour. Stay with us as we decode the Nepal crisis with a guest after the break. Semicon Taiwan underway in Taipei, witnessing participation of over 1,200 industry giants. Chinese museum displays items of Greek civilization. Stay with us for a rare glimpse.
This week on Defense Dynamics, from choke points to commands, the Indo-Pacific is on the edge. India and Singapore forge the Indo-Pacific shield. Can deterrence hold at sea lanes? GST 2.0, when tax reforms fuels combat readiness. China's Dragon Parade dazzles with power. What lies beneath the camouflage paint? And India's theatre commands are not an option but a necessity. Catch it all on Defense Dynamics this Wednesday at 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India NewsHour. Let's get to updates from Nepal. After days of violent anti-government protests in Nepal, the Nepal army took charge of the security in the country. Soldiers patrolled the streets of Kathmandu on Wednesday amid indefinite curfew in Nepal's capital, following deadly anti-graft protests that prompted Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign. The worst upheaval in decades in Nepal was sparked by a social media ban unveiled last week but rolled back after 19 persons died on Monday as police fired tear gas and rubber bullets to control the crowd. No protests were reported in the capital, but about 26 people trying to create trouble on the outskirts of Kathmandu have already been taken into custody. Following hours of violent protests in Kathmandu and other parts of the country, the Nepal army has also taken over security operations. The army has appealed for public cooperation, calling upon citizens to inform them once miscreants target public and personal property and damage historical, social, cultural and religious places. Further, considering reports of vandalism and arson in some places due to infiltration by anarchic persons and groups, and anticipating further possibility of such incidents, the army has issued a prohibitory order till 5 p.m. today, local time, while the curfew would be in force since then to 6 a.m. Thursday. In more news, a large number of prisoners have escaped from various jails across Nepal. In Bharatpur, prisoners set the prison on fire and fled. Although the exact number of prisoners who escaped is unclear, most of over 700 prisoners are likely to have fled. In Myagri, 76 out of 88 inmates escaped from the district jail, while 36 prisoners fled from the district jail in Jumla, following which the district administration office has issued a curfew order. 327 prisoners escaped from Tanahun prison amid escalating Gen Z movement when various government offices in the capital, Damoli, were being vandalized and set ablaze. In a separate incident on Tuesday night, 5 juveniles were killed and 4 others were severely injured in a clash with the security personnel at Nobasta Children's Correctional Home in Banke. However, nearly 80 juvenile detainees have managed to escape. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday chaired a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security to discuss developments in Nepal, where violent protests have toppled the government, and stressed that stability, peace and prosperity of the country are of utmost importance to India. Prime Minister Modi said the violence in Nepal, in which at least 19 people have lost their lives, is heart-rending, and appealed to the people in Nepal to support peace. The stability, peace and prosperity of Nepal are of utmost importance to India. Meanwhile, border districts of Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand have been put on high alert, and security across all border posts and vulnerable points has been beefed up. High alert has been sounded in Uttar Pradesh's 7 districts bordering Nepal, including Maharajganj, Siddharthnagar and Lakhimpur Kheri. Additional forces had been deployed to border police stations. Intelligence agencies have also been directed to maintain close watch. Intensified patrolling is also being undertaken on highways, village tracks and forest routes connecting the two countries. Meanwhile, flight operations have been temporarily suspended in all airports amid unrest. With the army taking control of the Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, flight operations remain suspended till 6 p.m. local time today. All right, our correspondent Shweta Singh joins us from Kathmandu for the latest. Shweta, good afternoon. Get us the latest when we talk of the law and order situation in Nepal.
Preeti, you see, the federal capital of Nepal is calm today. In fact, I didn't find much of the youth doing any vandalistic or rioting or creating chaos today. But my journalist friend from other part of Nepal have shared me the visuals and have informed me that in eastern Nepal, people are like ransacking food security office. So they have taken all the rice bags on their heads, on the shoulders, and they're escaping. And there is a lot of chaos created along the border. Luckily, Indian Army police forces are across the border. They have been strengthened, beefed up. So border is safe from Indian side. But apart from Valley, other parts of Nepal is yet seeing unrest. Here in Nepal, capital or Kathmandu, Nepali army have really taken control over the situation. And Nepali army vehicles are patrolling major roads. So that way you see situation is under control here in Kathmandu Valley.
All right, so the situation is under control in Kathmandu, but then Shweta, get us the specific regions in Nepal which are witnessing unrest at present.
Preeti, as I informed you, it is eastern Nepal, few places in eastern Nepal, the visuals have come from there, where people are ransacking government office, and along the border in Madhesh, Biratnagar is also there, where information have come now. So these are the places where people are really out of control, a bit chaotic, I would say.
All right, with Prime Minister already resigned, what do we know more of the caretaker government, Shweta?
Preeti, as such, there is no caretaker government or interim government now in Nepal. Nepali army is taking care of the situation here. And as you see, President Ramchandra Paudel has requested for peaceful solution by all the political parties, but all leaders are in hiding. They are protecting their lives first. If you see the visuals, how present ministers or senior leaders were treated, you will really be frightened, getting hurt or being kicked or dragged on the roads and street. This is a really frightening visual. So most of the leaders were ill-treated, their house were completely torched, the stone pelted. So now none of the leaders are in open. And security of leaders are very important, previous political leaders. And you see now, as Gen Z has demanded youth against corruption, but you see, getting a fine face to represent entire Nepal. It's not just Gen Z needs a representation. Entire Nepal needs a representation, a stable government. So that way Nepali army have taken control, but there is no such discussion of having an interim government. I hope so in coming time it may unfold when people start, Gen Z is also on talking table with Nepali army. But Nepali army is just about willing to know their view, exactly what they want. But for interim government as such, we don't have anything solid to talk about.
All right, Shweta, then, help us understand what is the, help us understand the nerve of the protesters. What is it that they're exactly looking at? Because on one hand, the interim government is not taking shape in Nepal. At the same time, the social media ban for which the protest had eventually, had in the first place started, has been revoked. Put all this together, now that the Prime Minister has resigned in Nepal and there is no government to take care at present, what is it that the Gen Z, the youth Gen Z is looking at?
See, first reminding that Gen Z started a peaceful protest. It was, even they didn't expect that it will take this ugly turn. They were just protesting against the present government, wanting corruption to stop, seeking employment, seeking good education, good life. But As 19 students were killed, 17 in Kathmandu, 2 in Itahari, that is East Nepal near Biratnagar. So it took really ugly shape because now every student could relate that I could be the one who would have been hit by the rubber bullet and I would be dead now. So that was not taken in good spirit, and then vandalism, rioting, and this all chaos happened. Because then it was the frustration and anger that came out, and all the leaders were targeted. When the leaders were targeted, it was seen as that anger is towards the government, towards the political leaders. But then they started attacking government buildings, which is made by the taxpayers' money, and that's their parents' money, their own property. So it was then it was realized it is not just Gen Z, because if you see the faces of the people vandalizing, it's not just 16 or 17-year-old. There were many mid-aged people also there of around 30s, 20, I would say 28. So they can't be termed as Gen Z. When Naxal Bhat Bhateni was looted, or when Radhe Radhe Bhat Bhateni was looted, your Hilton Hotel was burnt and the showpieces, souvenirs were taken out. Or you say Banijya Bank was looted with huge sum of money. The culprits whom you see there in the pictures and videos, they are not Gen Z. It is, I think you should realize that on the garb of Gen Z, keeping Gen Z as a face, other people, unsocial entities, use this situation to get benefit for themselves. And because in the beginning, you see, Gen Zs were also very clear, we don't want any political color. We are not just scapegoat for any political party. So it is that none of the political party was represented through Gen Z. It was the youth power, youth that was protesting against corruption. But the thing is, by having so much of huge lakhs of people on roads, it was really not easy for Nepal police at that moment to take control of these kids, I would say, because they were really that time college students, 16, 17 years of girls and boys in skirts and sweaters. So when first I witnessed in the morning, it was very heartening to see young population fighting for the rights. But later on in the evening, till evening, it took very brutal shape, very ugly shape. And next day of the protest was very bad when every small street, big roads had tires burning, road blocked, and everything was in chaos. When Nepal army at 10 p.m. yesterday night they came, they started taking things in control. The looters and the people who were creating chaos, they were caught, nabbed. So things is under control. Not exactly, I would say under control, but in Kathmandu Valley, at least it is in a better shape, better position. But outside the valley, people are yet taking advantage of this situation. And at least from at the border and in East Nepal, I would say the cases are yet coming up of vandalism.
All right, Shweta, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. And to talk more about the situation in Nepal, we're joined in by Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on DD India NewsHour. To begin with, when we talk of the current situation in Nepal, Prime Minister Oli has resigned, no interim government in place, and the unrest still continues. How do you gauge the gravity, the severity of the situation?
Well, it's been a very grave situation. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of violence, looting, etc. that has happened, and initially, such sort of movements, call it movement, call it whatever, may begin in a peaceful mode, but then it is hijacked by some people who make it violent. So that and the violence is generally deployed to ensure that the government runs scared, the police run scared. So to scare them, this technique has been deployed. We have seen it happening elsewhere in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Similar kind of template. Now, who instigates the violence? It's anybody's guess. It could be domestic, it could be external factors. Those who seek regime change, for example, using the domestic, dissatisfaction and anger against the government. So all this gets mixed up ultimately, and you have a situation what we are seeing in Nepal. What is worrying is that there is no, okay, you went in to remove the government. What is the alternative? I mean, is there a plan B? I mean, what happens now? Who's going to run the government, etc.? Now, the only way that can happen is that if the president, who's still there, could sit with the students and some leaders. We don't even know who the leaders are. Maybe one or two names have come up, and they can sit with them and say, look, let's calm things down, let's have an interim government, and let's put law and order back in shape. It sounds a bit self-destructive that when these mobs take over, apart from the looting, they are destroying public property.
Yes.
Property for which they have paid taxes, and it's public money. So now it doesn't help. Whichever government comes, regardless of its color or ideology, it will have to spend more money to rebuild all these things, the institutional buildings and all the destruction that has taken place of the infrastructure. And Nepal will not be the same again in terms of its politics. That we have to accept. And we'll have to prepare for another, different kind of Nepal, different polity perhaps. But who wins? Out of all this, the crucial question is who gains, who wins? And that should be, something that we should focus on and assess, because that is very important for the future of Nepal.
Yes, Nepal will not be the same again, is what you tell us, sir. But then earlier also we've seen how political rivals have come together, according to their respective political interests, when we talk of power in Nepal. Having said that, now when we see the road ahead, what really options are available in the present political system for the country to regain stability?
I think what I started off with by saying that there should be some government. Somebody should be responsible, whether it is an interim, unelected government, whether the president has powers to declare an emergency and say, okay, I will run the government with some advisors. That is one possibility. And then say that, look, I'm going to have elections in 3 months. You go, everybody can prepare to fight the election, whatever the procedures are, registered parties, etc., etc. Now, what will happen in the election is that clearly the old guard of politicians who were playing a sort of musical chairs among themselves in terms of holding power and then handing it over to some other person, etc., all part of a coterie. I'm afraid there will be a demand, I think, from the students that they should not be allowed to participate in election. They may not, on their own volition, they may not do so, because of the dangers of doing that is that you can again restart mob violence against them, because these people will be there to participate in the election. So things are very, very fluid, and we really do not know what's going to happen. And as I said, an interim government should be put in place, and the army should help, because that is an institution which is solid in that sense, and they are non-partisan to a large extent, I would say, although they may have individuals who may be partisan. But I think they should come to the support of the president, apart from first sort of putting things in order, law and order, etc., and telling the students, look, now go back home and sort of don't loot on the streets, stop looting, etc.
So what does an unstable and simmering Nepal mean for the region? We've seen Prime Minister Narendra Modi talk of how peace in Nepal is crucial, and how they want they want a better life for the people in Nepal. But then when we talk of what Nepal is going through at present, what does it mean for the region as a whole?
Well, this kind of violence in any region, why our region, is destabilizing for the neighbors or whoever is around the violence. And it destabilizes, it pulls down the economy. Look what has happened in in Bangladesh, what happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka defaulted on its debt. India had to step in and give them, $3 billion to stabilize the economy. Bangladesh also, the economy is, sliding down with some, maybe it will recover after some time, but who knows? And because it's an unstable government, a lot of mob violence still going on, and all kinds of, it's revenge politics. You can call it revenge politics in both countries. That politicians who have fallen in the public esteem are being targeted. And others are the mobs and students are taking revenge on the politicians because they feel that they have let them down very badly. That is the mood, I think.
All right, sir, we'll end it here. Thank you so much for joining in with your inputs on DD India NewsHour. That was our guest for the afternoon, Ambassador Pinak, explaining to us what the current situation is there in Nepal and what can be expected in the days ahead. Up next, we'll take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. Archaeological exhibits of the Greek civilization were on display in China's Sanshendoi Museum. The exhibition showcased a total of 172 articles, of which some were displayed out of Greece for the first time. Semicon Taiwan, an annual event of the industry, is underway in Taipei on Wednesday. This year's event has witnessed record participation of over 1,200 industry giants, surpassing previous records. 17 pavilions have been put up this year, showing Taiwan's deepening global partnership. Australia is set to invest 1.7 billion Australian dollars in a fleet of underwater sea drones called Ghost Sharks. Now, these autonomous undersea vehicles are being constructed by Australia and the US jointly for the purpose of surveillance and strikes. Australia will also aim to export some of these drones to its allies. Let's turn focus to Russia-Ukraine crisis now. Poland has condemned multiple violations of its airspace during a Russian attack on Ukraine, calling it an act of aggression. Poland's military claimed it spotted and shot down several drone-type objects that repeatedly violated Polish airspace during Russia's attack on Ukraine. The military said radars tracked more than 10 objects and those that could pose a threat were neutralized. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that NATO command has been briefed on the situation, while calling drone incursion a major provocation aimed at the EU and NATO member. Russia's defense ministry, however, has not responded to the claims yet.
Dzisiaj w nocy doszło do naruszenia przestrzeni powietrznej.
Tonight, a large number of Russian drones violated Polish airspace. Those drones, which posed a direct threat, were shot down. This is the first time Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO country. Therefore, all our allies are taking the situation very seriously. We have not recorded any casualties.
Jesteśmy w konsultacjach z naszymi sojusznikami. Jestem w stałym kontakcie.
Meanwhile, operations at airports in Warsaw, Modlin and Rezau have restored, while the airport in Lublin remains temporarily closed. The airports were earlier closed due to military actions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed that at least 8 drones targeted Poland during the Russian attack. Terming the incident a dangerous precedent for Europe, Zelensky called for a strong response from its allies. Further, Zelensky stated that Russia launched over 400 drones and 40 missiles at Ukraine overnight, leaving at least 1 dead in Zhytomyr region. European Union chief Ursula von der Leyen, during her State of EU address, slammed Russia for reckless and unprecedented violation of Polish airspace. The EU chief has reiterated Europe's commitment to stand in full solidarity with Poland.
Just today, we have seen a reckless and unprecedented violation of Poland and Europe's airspace by more than 10 Russian Shahid drones. Europe stands in full solidarity with Poland.
Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has issued a strong warning to Israel following a missile strike on Doha on Tuesday, calling the incident a clear violation of Qatar's sovereignty and an act of regional destabilization. The Qatar Prime Minister said that Qatar reserved the right to respond to this blatant attack.
Qatar affirms that it will not tolerate any violation of its sovereignty or territorial integrity. It will respond firmly to any reckless breach or aggression that threaten its security and undermine its regional stability. Qatar reserves the right to respond to this blatant attack and will take all necessary measures to address it.
Reaffirming his commitment to mediating peace, Al Thani said that mediation efforts are part of the Qatari identity and nothing would deter its role in that regard.
Mediation in Qatari diplomacy is part of our identity and will continue. Nothing will deter us from carrying on this role in all the various issues surrounding us in the region.
Multiple explosions rocked Doha on Tuesday in what Israel has confirmed was a targeted airstrike against senior Hamas leaders. The Israeli Defense Forces and the Shin Bet security agency claimed responsibility for it, marking the first known Israeli strike on Qatari soil. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel takes full responsibility for the strikes, calling it an independent military action. In other news, French President Emmanuel Macron has named loyalist Sébastien Lecornu as Prime Minister on Tuesday, defying expectations he might tack towards the left. Macron made the appointment one day after his last Prime Minister, François Bayrou, was ousted in a parliamentary confidence vote over his efforts to cut public spending. However, Macron's office said the president had asked Lecornu to hold talks with all political forces in parliament to find compromises on the budget and other policies before naming his cabinet. Lecornu will become Macron's fifth prime minister in less than 2 years after parliament ousted François Bayrou. President Macron did not take long to name a new prime minister, but along with it, France seems to be heading into a renewed period of unrest. With frustration over austerity plans boiling over, grassroots groups have called for a nationwide block everything movement on Wednesday that aims to paralyze transport, schools and daily life. Political parties and unions have expressed their disbelief and discontent on social media. Numerous users demanded that the French leader dissolve the National Assembly and call snap elections. Messages circulating online have urged supporters to blockade Paris Ring Road, Europe's busiest urban motorway with 1.2 million vehicles a day, and even sabotage power at certain metro and train stations. France has a new prime minister as of today, just days after his predecessor lost a vote of confidence in parliament. Even under new leadership, the country is reeling and looking for direction. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin. Lars, what's the situation in France at present?
Having me. Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to actually take a few steps back to better understand the situation here. Earlier this week, François Bayrou became not the first prime minister to lose the parliament's confidence and step down. He was, in fact, the fourth one over the past 2 years. And that should tell you something. There's a larger problem there in France that might not have much to do with who is running the country, but more with some fundamental issues. And that is true, in fact. France has a very high level of debt, actually the highest level of debt of any of the EU member countries. And mind you, France is the EU's second biggest economy, so that is nothing that we could just ignore here in Europe. France's debt stands at 116% of the nation's GDP. The country is paying way too much to satisfy its debt, and to just make it short, the country can no longer afford this high level of debt. So for reforms, now former Prime Minister Bayrou had made some suggestions that people didn't like, including cutting 2 holidays, meaning for French workers to have 2 fewer days off. Now, it's easy to see why people didn't like that. But there's no getting around the fact that the French will have to sacrifice something to get out of their financial mess.
All right, Lars, why is France in this situation anyway? Why is their debt so high?
Well, that's been a development over decades. Now, the government would tell you that the economic weakness brought upon by the pandemic a few years ago is at the heart of the problem. And it's partially true. The pandemic did pose an economic challenge, and France didn't manage to bounce back like some other countries did. But actually, France has for decades spent more money than they brought in. They've been running budget deficits for way too long. Last year, it stood at 5.8% of GDP. And this year, it will likely come in at around 5.5% as well, according to government economists. Generally, France is facing a demographic nightmare like many Western European nations, with too many old people retiring and not enough young people coming into the labor market. Also, the French used to retire at 62. That stopped 2 years ago when President Emmanuel Macron lifted the retirement age to 64. But on the one hand, that's still pretty early considering that people are living longer lives. And on the other hand, it was and is still unacceptable to many in France. So there's huge potential for unrest.
All right, Lars, also what's next for the country then? How will France solve this crisis?
Well, what's next seems to be starting today. There is major unrest with protests planned in many cities, and the French are pretty tough with protests. Of course, that won't solve anything. For now, the ball was, of course, in President Macron's court, and he reacted fast, making his Secretary of Defense, Sébastien Lecornu, the new prime minister. The alternative would have been elections, and that is what Macron wanted to avoid. In the current political climate, new elections would have likely strengthened the right and the left while weakening the moderates. France is already in a pickle here with the far left and the far right blocking most progress in parliament. Macron has at least now said he might be open to a better cooperation with the socialist left that would bring upon a constellation the country had for many years in the past. Fact is, even with a new prime minister quickly put in place, there are no easy solutions, with parties often blocking each other in parliament.
All right, Lars, thank you for joining in with those details. And back home, Fitch Ratings has raised its forecast for India's economic growth for the current fiscal to 6.9% from 6.5% earlier, citing stronger than expected momentum in the June quarter, driven by robust services activity and resilient consumption. India's real GDP grew 7.8% year-on-year in the April to June quarter, accelerating from 7.4% in the previous 3 months and beating Fitch's projection of 6.7%. Domestic demand remains the key growth driver, supported by strong real income dynamics and looser financial conditions as per the Fitch Ratings. The agency expects growth to moderate in the second half of the fiscal year and slow to 6.3% and 6.2% in the next 2 fiscal years. Fitch also flagged the narrowing gap between nominal and real GDP growth and said that real GDP may be overstated due to weak wholesale and commodity prices, which could reverse if price pressures return. India has crossed a major milestone in clean energy journey. In just a decade, the country has tripled its non-fossil capacity, placing itself among the global leaders. Tapas Bhattacharya gets us more.
In 2014, India's non-fossil capacity stood at just 81 gigawatts. Today, that figure has touched a historic 250 gigawatts, marking one of the fastest clean energy transitions in the world. Guided by the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this growth comes from rapid expansion in solar parks, wind farms, hydro projects and nuclear energy. Together, they now contribute nearly half of India's total power capacity, 5 years ahead of global commitments under the Paris Agreement. The surge is visible on the ground, from vast solar fields in Rajasthan to new wind hubs in Tamil Nadu. In June alone, India added 7.3 gigawatts of renewable power, setting a monthly record. The road ahead is ambitious: 500 gigawatts of non-fossil energy by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2070. But with the current momentum, India is well on course to achieve both. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
Mauritian Prime Minister Dr. Naveen Chandra Ramagulam attended the Mauritius-India Business Conclave in Mumbai on Wednesday. Speaking on the sidelines of the conclave, Prime Minister Ramagulam highlighted the special relation between both the countries. He added that with global uncertainties, Mauritius wants to develop its existing relationship with India, and there is a need to have further cooperation between both the nations.
Mauritius and India enjoy a special and unique relationship that is unparalleled, given the shared bonds of history, culture, language, heritage, kinship, and values. The Mauritius-India ties, anchored in people-to-people and cultural exchanges, have grown from strength to strength in the last several decades into a comprehensive, strategic, and modern, forward-looking partnership that cuts across various domains and benefits the two countries, their people, and the wider Indian Ocean Economic Region.
Colombo's J.D.A. Pereira Gallery witnessed the opening of the second edition of Chitralekha, an art exhibition by Sri Lankan alumni of Indian institutions on Wednesday. It features works by 21 contemporary artists who studied in India. Deputy High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Dr. Satyanjal Pandey, and parliamentarian Jagat Manuvarna inaugurated the exhibition. Organized by Swami Vivekanand Cultural Centre of High Commission of India, the exhibition highlights the strong cultural and educational links between the two countries. The exhibition will remain open to the public until September 13th. Let's turn focus to sports now. We'll talk of cricket. India will start their Asia Cup campaign against hosts United Arab Emirates in Dubai on Wednesday. With a powerful squad blending youth and experience, India will hope to begin on a high, while the UAE, backed by home support, will aim to secure a huge upset. Here's a report.
The stage is set for India's opening match of the Asia Cup 2025. Surya Kumar Yadav's men face host UAE under the lights at the Dubai International Cricket Stadium on Wednesday. India comes into this contest as favourites. Abhishek Sharma and Gill are expected to open, followed by skipper Surya Kumar Yadav, Tilak Verma and Rinku in the middle order, while Jitesh Sharma and Sanju Samson are set to take the wicket-keeping gloves. All-rounders Hardik Pandya, Shivam Dubey and Aksar Patel add both depth and firepower. The pace attack will be spearheaded by Jasprit Bumrah, supported by Arshdeep Singh and Harshit Rana, with Varun and Kuldeep Yadav spin. This fixture is also important for India in terms of preparation. With the crucial clash against Pakistan lined up on September 14th, the UAE contest serves as an opportunity to experiment with combinations and strategy. India's rich Asia Cup history further strengthens their case. Having lifted the trophy 8 times, the men in blue will look to carry that dominance forward. But the UAE cannot be taken lightly. The two sides have met only once in T20 internationals in 2016, when India sealed a comfortable win. Since then, UAE has grown significantly. The hosts have won 20 of their last 27 T20 internationals, most of them in multi-nation tournaments. That record underlines their ability to perform under pressure, and against a powerhouse like India, they will look to make a statement. With crowd support expected for both sides, the atmosphere at the Dubai International Stadium promises to be electric. For India, the challenge will be to start strong and fine-tune their rhythm. For the UAE, it's an opportunity to test themselves against the world-class opposition and showcase their progress on the big stage. Sports Desk, DD India.
That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.